I can't do this anymore. Her scream sliced through the cramped apartment, colliding with the metallic roar of a train rushing past the window. She seized the envelope from the table, tore it in two, and hurled the pieces into his face. The red numbers screamed louder than her voice, an overdue debt larger than everything they had earned in a year. The scraps floated to the floor, settling among coffee stains and cigarette burns, reminders of nights spent awake counting every dollar. His chest tightened, he wanted to speak, but the words died in his throat. Before sound returned, the door burst open. Their neighbor stumbled in, pale and panting, sweat shining on his forehead. They were here, he gasped. And they'll be back. His voice cracked, eyes darting toward the hallway as if someone might already be listening. He offered no explanation, and that silence weighed heavier than the words themselves. Who were they? Why here? Why tonight? The neighbor lingered for one tense heartbeat, then disappeared as quickly as he'd come. She shoved her partner's arm, stepping closer, her whisper sharp as a blade, "This is your last chance. Either you do what we talked about, or tomorrow is too late." His mind flashed back to that winter evening when they had joked about a reckless plan over instant coffee and a broken heater. It had been half dream, half dare, something to laugh at when reality felt unbearable. But now her eyes told him it was no joke, it was the only option left. A violent knock rattled the door, glass trembling in its frame. She strode to the dresser, yanked open the bottom drawer, and pulled out a yellowed envelope bound with a rubber band, stamped with a faded bank logo. Without hesitation she slid it into her jacket. "Shoes," she ordered. He swallowed hard. Who was here? She ignored him. The lamp flickered. The train screamed again. Upstairs, a dog barked like it sensed disaster approaching. She snatched his phone, silenced the ringer, and set it face down. "Eyes on me. Remember the list?" His stomach dropped. The laptop whined as it lit up, revealing the spreadsheet, 117 names, buyers and managers who could say yes with a single call. On the screen blinked an unsent draft, "We can cut your costs by Friday. 30 minutes. 3 yes. If not, we do the other thing." Her tone left no room for doubt. He whispered, "The other thing?" She pressed the envelope against his chest. "Don't ask. Just act." Another crash hit the door. His fingers shook as he clicked call. Dial tone. Voicemail. He tried again. "Who's this?" a woman snapped. He forced steel into his voice, "You don't know me, but I can save you money this week." She didn't hang up. He pressed harder, repeating her doubts, promising numbers not yet real. Behind him she moved quickly, arranging chipped plates like samples, marking tape on the floor, staging the impossible. She mouthed, "Don't say try. Say deliver." He obeyed. The lie burned, but it carried fire. The handle jerked again, metal straining. She scribbled on a pad, "Mason and Pike. 9 a.m. tomorrow." He blinked, ready to ask, but her stare silenced him. "Second yes first," she hissed. "Keep going." The pounding grew sharper, each strike shaking the thin frame. He held the phone tighter, his knuckles white, trying to block out the noise. "We'll deliver on time," he repeated into the receiver. A pause. Then a clipped response, "Send me details tonight." The line went dead. His chest leapt, second yes. But there was no time to celebrate. She yanked the laptop closer, fingers flying across the keyboard, attaching half-finished drafts, photographs of chipped plates staged as samples. "Keep calling," she ordered. Her voice carried no tremor now, only steel. He scrolled through the list. The next number blurred, his hand trembled. The door rattled again, harder. From the hallway came muffled voices. One deeper, demanding. Another, the neighbors, weak, buying seconds with excuses. 10 minutes, she hissed. That's all he can stall them. He dialed again, pressing the phone to his ear. The ring dragged forever. Finally, "Hello?" A man's tone sharp, impatient. "This is urgent," he blurted. "I can cut your costs this week. 3% guaranteed." Lies spun from his mouth faster than he could think. The man exhaled. Numbers. His mind froze. She shoved a scrap of paper in front of him, rough calculations, scratched figures, believable enough. He read them as if rehearsed. Silence stretched. Then, send me a sheet by morning. The call clicked off. Third yes. His pulse pounded in his skull. He turned to her, eyes wide, but she didn't smile. Instead, she grabbed his bag, shoved the envelope deeper inside. We're not safe yet, she said flatly. Yes mean nothing if we don't last the night. Another crash hit the door, this time splintering wood. The knob twisted violently. His stomach flipped. She pushed him back, standing between him and the entry. Laptop. Keep sending. If they break in, you run. No hesitation. I can't leave you, he muttered, throat raw. Her glare cut him still. You promised. Her hand pressed against his chest, not soft but forceful, pinning him to the reality she refused to abandon. Outside, the neighbor's voice cracked mid-sentence. A heavier voice barked back. Footsteps stomped closer. Shadows slid under the door. He imagined boots on their worn floor, hands tearing open drawers, voices demanding answers he didn't have. She leaned close, whispering fast, one more call. A big one. You know the name. His screen showed it, a contact at a chain store he'd never dared to dial. Too high. Too risky. His finger hovered. She grabbed his wrist and pressed it down. Now. The ring seemed endless, every buzz colliding with the pounding on the door. Sweat blurred his vision. Then, a voice, calm but sharp, yes. His mouth opened, words forming, while the door behind them groaned under another strike. The voice on the line waited, calm but impatient. Who is this? His throat locked. The pounding on the door shook dust from the ceiling. She pressed closer, whispering, say it. Show him you belong in that room. He forced breath into his lungs. I represent a supplier who never misses deadlines. I can cut your costs this quarter. Silence followed. He feared the call had died, then the man asked, are you the same Carter who tried to pitch us last year? His chest froze. That name, his name, hung like a threat. Last year he had tried, failed, humiliated himself in front of buyers who laughed him out of the lobby. How did this man remember? His eyes darted to her. She didn't flinch. She mouthed, don't run now. He gripped the phone tighter. Yes, he admitted, voice low. But this time is different. The door cracked under another blow. Splinters scattered across the floor. She moved quickly, stacking the chipped plates into the backpack alongside the yellow envelope, creating weight that looked like samples. Numbers, the man demanded. His mind scrambled. She scribbled figures on the margin of an old bill, pushing it into his hand. He repeated them, steadying his voice. A pause, then, send me your sheet before sunrise. The line clicked off. 3 yes. Exactly what she had said. Yet her face showed no relief. Instead she zipped the bag and whispered, we need to move. Now. Another crash split the doorframe, boots scraping the hall. Their neighbor's voice cracked again, weaker, unable to hold them off longer. She shoved the backpack into his arms. Window, she ordered. He hesitated. They'll see us. Her jaw clenched. Then don't let them catch you. He stumbled toward the fire escape. Cold air sliced his face as he opened the rusted frame. She followed, but before climbing out she stopped, grabbing a small box from the counter, something he hadn't noticed before. A lockbox, dented, taped shut, edges marked with an old shipping label. She stuffed it under her jacket. What is that? He hissed. No answer. Her eyes narrowed. Not here. They slipped into the night, metal groaning under their weight as the door behind them burst inward. Shouts filled the apartment. Heavy footsteps stomped across the floor. He didn't look back. She pushed him down the stairs, urging him faster. On the street, neon lights flickered across puddles. He gasped, heart slamming, but she didn't slow. 3 yes mean nothing if we don't deliver, she said, clutching the lockbox tighter. And what's inside this? She stopped herself, shook her head. Just keep moving. Her silence screamed louder than words. The envelope in his bag. The lockbox against her chest. The people upstairs tearing through their apartment. And now buyers waiting for promises he wasn't sure he could keep. Cold night air bit into his lungs as they sprinted down the fire escape. Behind them, the apartment door gave way, voices erupting, boots thundering across the floor they had just abandoned. She shoved him forward, forcing him to leap the last steps 2 at a time. His backpack slammed against his spine, heavier with each bounce, as if the envelope inside grew denser by the second. On the street, headlights swept across them. He froze, blinded. She yanked him into an alley, pressing him against the brick wall. Keep moving, she hissed. He caught his breath long enough to ask, what's in that lockbox? Her grip on it tightened. For a moment, she almost answered. Then, not now. They rushed through side streets, neon signs buzzing above shuttered shops. He wanted to scream at her for silence, for secrets, for dragging him into chaos. But every time he looked at her face he saw the fire that had carried them this far. She wasn't scared, she was resolved. A siren wailed blocks away, sharp and rising. He didn't know if it belonged to police, an ambulance, or the people chasing them. All he knew was that it was getting closer. She stopped suddenly, pulling him into a doorway. From her jacket she slid out the lockbox. The tape across the lid was frayed, corners marked with faded ink. She peeled back just enough to show him something inside, papers, thick, creased, stamped. Official. His chest clenched. What is that? She shook her head. Proof, she whispered. The kind that can bury us or make us untouchable. Before he could press, footsteps echoed at the alley's mouth. She slammed the box shut and shoved it back under her coat. They ran again, cutting across an empty intersection. His phone buzzed inside his pocket, an email. He risked a glance. One of the buyers had replied. Send samples. Price sheet. Deadline midnight. Midnight was less than 3 hours away. His throat dried. They had nothing real to send. She dragged him into another narrow passage. The walls dripped with condensation, trash cans toppled. She turned, gripping his shoulders hard. Listen. The yes keep us alive tonight. But tomorrow, she tapped his backpack, this is what changes everything. He tried to open it, desperate for answers, but her fingers clamped it shut. Not here. Not yet. From the end of the alley, a shadow stretched, blocking the faint glow of the street. A voice carried through the dark, low and steady, you can't run forever. The shadow at the alley's mouth froze him in place. The voice carried calm authority, but the echo of boots behind it told a different story. She shoved him sideways, pulling him deeper into the narrow passage. Don't look back, she whispered. They darted between trash cans, their footsteps splashing through puddles. Behind them came the steady rhythm of pursuit, measured, confident, unhurried, as if whoever followed knew exactly how this chase would end. His lungs burned. The backpack dragged against his shoulders, heavier with each stride, the envelope inside thudding like a second heartbeat. Every breath scraped his throat. We can't outrun them, he gasped. She didn't slow. We don't need to. We just need to last. They burst into the open street. A car horn blared, tires screeched, lights flooded their faces. He stumbled, nearly falling under the headlights, but she yanked him forward just in time. The driver shouted, swerving, the smell of burnt rubber filling the night. For a second, he thought he'd collapse right there, but she pulled him onward, dragging him into the cover of a shuttered storefront. She pressed him against the wall, her voice low and sharp. Listen to me. Buyers don't care if you bleed. They care if you deliver. Midnight is all that matters. Her words struck him harder than the chase itself. His mind replayed the emails waiting in his inbox, the deadline stacked against the ticking clock. How could he build something from nothing in a few hours? His phone buzzed again. Another reply. This time, not a polite request, an ultimatum, confirm stock and delivery by morning or lose the deal. His stomach knotted. He didn't even have real stock. Only chipped plates, tape lines, and lies balanced on desperation. He turned to her, voice breaking. "We can't do this. They'll find out. We'll crash harder than before." She shook her head violently. "No. You don't get it. They don't buy products. They buy belief. If you make them believe, we live. If not," she glanced at the lockbox, "then this becomes the only card left to play." The weight of her words crushed him. She had always carried them forward, but tonight she looked different, her fire now mixed with exhaustion. He realized she was just as scared, though she would never admit it. Something inside him cracked. "I don't want to lose you," he whispered. For the first time, her eyes softened. But only for a moment. Shouts cut through the night. Their pursuers had found the street. Flashlights flicked across walls, searching. She grabbed his hand. "Roof," she said, pointing to the fire escape of another building. They scrambled upward, metal groaning beneath their weight. His legs screamed, every muscle begging to stop, but the sounds below pushed him higher. On the rooftop, the city sprawled under flickering neon. Sirens wailed somewhere distant. The night air chilled his sweat-soaked skin. For a fleeting second, he felt like they'd escaped. Then a beam of light swept across the roof. Voices shouted. They were cornered. She pulled the lockbox from her jacket and shoved it into his hands. "If they catch us, don't let them take this." He stared at it, confused, terrified. "Why? What's inside?" She shook her head. "Enough to destroy us. Enough to save us. Both." The footsteps drew closer. He looked at her, desperate for answers, but she turned toward the sound, jaw set, eyes blazing. "Run when I say. Don't argue." His chest ached. He wanted to fight, to protect, but deep down he knew he wasn't ready. Not yet. The first figure appeared on the roof's edge, silhouetted against the neon glow. Another climbed up behind. They advanced slowly, confident, as if escape was no longer possible. She squared her shoulders, hand brushing his for the briefest second, a silent reminder that this was not the end, just another battle. And then, with the city roaring below and the deadline looming ahead, she whispered the one word that set his heart on fire: now. The word "now" echoed in his ears as they vaulted across the rooftop, lungs burning, legs pumping against steel and tar. Behind them voices cursed, boots scraping metal, beams of light cutting through the dark. He gripped the lockbox against his chest, the backpack slamming his back with each stride. His whole body screamed, but he ran, because she was still in front of him, pulling, commanding, never slowing. They crossed one rooftop, then another, before dropping onto a fire escape. He almost missed the rung, nearly slipped, but her hand clamped his wrist and yanked him steady. "Focus," she snapped. They reached the alley below, vanishing into shadows as shouts scattered across the roof. For now, they had a lead. They ducked into an abandoned warehouse, the air thick with dust and rust. Broken windows rattled in the wind. For the first time all night, silence fell heavy. He collapsed against a pillar, chest heaving, sweat freezing on his skin. She crouched opposite, the lockbox between them like a third presence. He stared at it, voice hoarse. "That man on the call, he remembered me. From last year." His words came out more confession than statement. She didn't look surprised. Of course he did. His head snapped up. "What do you mean?" She pressed her lips, then finally whispered, "Because last year wasn't just failure. It was sabotage." The word hit him like a blow. His mind reeled back to that night, him waiting in a lobby, clutching his cheap samples, watching doors close in his face. He had believed it was his fault, his incompetence. "Sabotage," he repeated. She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes darted to the windows, scanning for movement. Then, quietly, "You were never supposed to get that deal. Someone made sure of it." His stomach twisted. "Who?" She shook her head. "Not here. But think. Who benefited when you failed?" His chest tightened as names flickered through his memory, competitors, middlemen, even supposed friends. Before he could press, the creak of a distant door snapped them both alert. She grabbed the lockbox, clutching it tight. This is connected. What's in here? It proves what happened. But we can't open it now. He reached for it anyway, desperation boiling over. She pulled it back sharply. If you see it, you won't be able to keep moving. You'll freeze. And we don't have time. Her phone buzzed, a message from one of the buyers. He leaned over her shoulder, reading the text. Your offer looks familiar. Are you tied to the Carter file from last year? His breath caught. It wasn't just memory. They were connecting dots. She slammed the phone shut. They're circling. They know more than we thought. Panic surged through him. Then we're finished. She shook her head, fierce. No. This is leverage. If they think you're the same Carter who failed, prove them wrong tonight. That's how you win. The sound of footsteps grew nearer, echoing through the warehouse. Flashlights danced across the broken windows. She pushed the backpack back onto his shoulders, then placed the lockbox on top of it, pressing it into him. Run if I say. And whatever happens, don't let this fall into their hands. The footsteps stopped just outside, the silence heavier than the chase. He heard voices murmuring, then a single phrase that froze his blood, check the Carter file. If he's carrying it, tonight ends here. The voices outside the warehouse grew sharper, commands bouncing against the hollow walls. He held his breath, every nerve alive with terror. She grabbed his arm, pulling him deeper into the shadows. Stay low, she whispered. They crouched behind a stack of rusted barrels, the lockbox wedged between them like a heartbeat too loud to ignore. A beam of light swept across the floor. Boots crunched on broken glass. Someone cursed. Another voice ordered silence. He felt sweat sting his eyes, throat burning as he tried not to cough. She pressed her palm against his chest, steadying his frantic heartbeat. For a moment, it seemed the searchers would pass. Then a clatter, his shoe scraped against metal. The light spun toward them. Shouts erupted. She didn't hesitate. Run. They bolted, sprinting through the warehouse as beams cut across the dark. Bullets cracked, smashing into pillars, sparks spitting from steel. They burst through a side door into the night. Cold rain had started, turning alleys slick and dangerous. He slipped, crashing onto his knees. Pain shot up his leg, but she yanked him to his feet, dragging him forward. They ducked into another alley, splashing through water, the lockbox knocking against his ribs with every stride. For the first time all night, he shouted, voice raw, why are we carrying this if it's killing us? She spun on him, eyes blazing even in the rain. Because without it, none of this matters. Her voice cracked, not with anger but with something deeper, fear and conviction fused together. Sirens wailed again, closer now. They pressed against a wall, hidden in shadows. His leg throbbed, blood seeping from a gash. She tore fabric from her sleeve, wrapping it fast. You keep moving. You don't stop. Understand? He nodded weakly, her resolve pouring into him like fire. His phone buzzed again. Another buyer. This one different, we're interested. Meet tomorrow, 7 a.m., downtown office. For a second, hope flared. He showed her. She scanned the message, then smiled grimly. That's our window. If we make it there, everything changes. But the rain thickened, drowning out thought, and the shadows of pursuit stretched longer behind them. He wanted to believe the text was victory, but it felt more like bait, another trap waiting to spring. They found shelter under a bridge, water dripping through cracks. He slumped against the wall, exhaustion swallowing him. She crouched, lockbox still in her arms. One day you'll open this, she said softly, almost to herself. And you'll understand why we can't give up. He stared at her, at the rain streaking her face like tears. He wanted to ask again, but footsteps echoed from above the bridge. Too close. She snapped her head toward him. On your feet. They stumbled back into the night, following the river's curve. For once, the city seemed silent, no shouts, no lights, only their breath and the steady drum of rain. For a fleeting moment, it felt like they had slipped away. Then headlights ignited the darkness ahead. A van blocked the path. Doors slammed open. Figures stepped out, umbrellas shielding them from the storm. One called out his name, his real name, clear and precise, like a verdict. He froze, shock flooding him. How did they know? She gripped his arm tighter, whispering, "Don't let go." Then, louder, steadier than the storm itself, she said, "We're not finished yet." Rain hammered the street as the van's headlights blinded him. Figures emerged, dark silhouettes against the storm. One spoke his name again, crisp and certain, as if reading from a file. He staggered back, legs trembling. She pulled him closer, her grip iron. "Don't react," she whispered. "They feed on fear." The man in front raised a hand. "Carter," he called, his tone almost polite. "You've been carrying something that doesn't belong to you." His eyes flicked toward the backpack. Instinctively, Carter tightened the straps. The envelope and lockbox pressed heavier against his back, a weight he couldn't shed. "We don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice steady despite the rain soaking her hair, her clothes. The man chuckled softly, shaking his head. "You always were convincing. But you can't outrun the past." His words stabbed deep. How much did they know? How far back did this file on him go? Before Carter could move, another figure advanced, holding a folder sealed in plastic. Even through the storm he saw his name printed on the label. The man waved it slightly. "Proof," he said simply. "Proof you failed. Proof you stole. Proof you ran." His chest collapsed. He had believed his past failure was forgotten, buried. But now it stood in front of him, tangible, weaponized. He opened his mouth to deny it, but she squeezed his arm until it hurt. "Don't speak," she hissed. The pursuers stepped closer. She suddenly shoved Carter sideways, dragging him into the dark just as the van doors slammed open. They sprinted, tires squealing behind them, shouts echoing. Adrenaline forced his legs forward despite the pain. They cut through backstreets until the noise thinned, collapsing against the wall of an old print shop. Carter gasped, chest heaving. "They had my name. My file. How?" She pulled the lockbox onto her lap, rain dripping from its dented lid. Her eyes burned. "Because the truth isn't in their folder, it's in here." He froze. "So open it. End this." She shook her head. "Not yet. You're not ready." Her refusal sliced him open. "Not ready," he shouted. "I've been running, bleeding, lying for hours, and you're telling me I'm not ready?" She leaned close, her voice like steel. "If you see what's inside, you won't be able to keep moving. And right now, movement is the only thing keeping us alive." His phone buzzed again, the screen lighting up against the storm. Another email from a buyer. "We heard rumors. Is it true you've been investigated? We need reassurance before signing." His throat closed. They were circling, closing in from every side, buyers, enemies, the past itself. She snatched the phone, typed furiously, and hit send. He tried to grab it back, but she glared. "Trust me. They don't need the truth. They need confidence." Her hands shook as she said it, betraying cracks in her armor. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed again. The city felt smaller with every second, as if every street was a trap, every shadow a pair of watching eyes. Carter looked at her, at the lockbox in her lap, at the envelope pressed to his back. Answers sat inches away, yet remained locked behind her will. Finally, she whispered words that chilled him more than the rain. "This isn't just about debt or business anymore. What's in here could bury more than us. That's why they'll never stop." The rain eased to a mist, but the silence that followed was worse. Every drop seemed amplified, every echo in the alley a warning. Carter pressed his back against the wall, the lockbox gleaming dully in her hands. She looked at it as if it might explode. "We can't keep running," he whispered, voice raw. "They already know who I am. Buyers are pulling back. If we don't show them something real by morning," he stopped, unable to finish. She met his eyes, unflinching. Then we make them believe something bigger than real. Her certainty cut through the dread, but only for a second. He rubbed his leg, blood seeping through the makeshift bandage. Exhaustion clawed at him, heavier than the backpack. Yet his mind spun, replaying the man's words, "Proof you failed, proof you stole." Was that what the buyers were already hearing? That he was a fraud long before tonight? She stood abruptly, pacing the cracked pavement. "We go downtown at 7, she said. "We walk into that meeting as if nothing's chasing us. And if we survive until then," she touched the lockbox, "we use this." He pushed himself up, anger flaring through his fatigue. "Use what? You keep telling me it's everything, but you won't even let me see it." She stopped, staring at him through the haze. "Because once you do, there's no going back. You'll have to choose, either to fight or to vanish. And I'm not sure you're ready for either." Her words tore him apart. He wanted to scream, to rip open the box, to demand the truth. But headlights flared suddenly at the end of the alley. A car slowed, window rolling down. For one agonizing second, Carter thought it was the van again. Instead, a different face appeared, lit by the dashboard glow, familiar, older. It was a buyer. One from the list. "Carter?" The man called softly, almost like a friend. "We should talk. Off the record." His chest seized. How had this man found them here, in the middle of the night? She stiffened beside him, pulling him back into the shadows. "Not safe," she muttered. But the buyer lifted his hands, empty, calm. "You're not the only one they burned. You think you failed last year? Look closer." The car idled, engine purring, words hanging heavy. Carter felt the ground tilt beneath him. The buyer knew something. Maybe about the sabotage. Maybe about the lockbox. But before he could move, a shout echoed down the block. Lights blazed. The buyer's eyes widened. "Go," he hissed, slamming the car into gear, vanishing into the storm. Tires screeched behind them, pursued again, faster this time. She grabbed Carter's arm. "We move. Now." They bolted into the maze of streets, lungs tearing, every muscle screaming. Ahead, skyscrapers rose, their windows glowing like watchful eyes. The city itself felt like it was closing in. As they ran, Carter's phone buzzed once more. He glanced down, nearly stumbling. A new message, unsigned, "We know what's in the lockbox. Meet us before 7, or it's over." His blood turned to ice. He looked at her, heart racing. She read the message, her face unreadable, then whispered, "They shouldn't know. Unless someone told them." Her gaze burned into him, suspicion sharp as a blade. For the first time all night, he realized she wasn't entirely sure she could trust him either. They stumbled into the gray dawn, the storm breaking into scattered drops. The city buzzed faintly, waking. Carter's body was breaking, but his mind was sharper than ever. The deadline, 7 a.m., loomed like a guillotine. She walked beside him, clutching the lockbox, every step defiant despite exhaustion. They reached the edge of downtown. Towers loomed, glass and steel reflecting the pale sky. Crowds would arrive soon, filling sidewalks, but for now the streets were empty, echoing with their uneven steps. His phone buzzed again, buyers pressing for proof, pursuers threatening. He slipped it back into his pocket. Enough. No more running from shadows. At the plaza of Mason and Pike, the very company that had rejected him last year, they stopped. His chest clenched. This was it. The same lobby where he had once stood humiliated, dismissed, a nobody with nothing but cheap samples. Only now, he had more, deals half won, promises of buyers, and the lockbox that could change everything. She turned to him, eyes steady. "It's time." She placed the lockbox in his hands. He froze. "You mean," she nodded. "Open it. No more waiting." His fingers trembled as he tore the tape and lifted the lid. Inside lay documents, thick and weathered. Contracts. Letters. Financial statements. But not his. Not hers. They were proof of rigged bids, bribes, and manipulation tied to Mason and Pike themselves. They hadn't just sabotaged him last year, they had sabotaged countless others, burying competitors, controlling markets, deciding who rose and who failed. His failure had been engineered from the start. He stared, the truth scorching him. All the humiliation, all the debt, it had never been about his weakness. It had been theft, corruption, a system built to keep people like him on the ground. His throat closed, but not from shame, this time, it was fury. She placed a hand on his shoulder, voice fierce. Now you understand. This isn't about selling plates or chasing scraps. This is about taking back what they stole. You wanted a chance? Here it is. Voices erupted behind them. The van screeched into the plaza, men spilling out. Their neighbor was with them, dragged forward, terrified. He knew, one of the pursuers barked. He saw too much. Carter's heart hammered. The enemy closed in. Buyers demanded proof. Time was gone. For one suspended moment, he had a choice, run again, or stand here and fight. He lifted the papers high, shouting into the morning air. This is what you tried to bury. This is why we're still standing. His voice carried, echoing against the towers. Crowds had begun to gather, workers arriving early, security guards stepping closer, phones lifting to record. The pursuers froze, caught in the open. The very silence of the plaza broke under the weight of exposure. The buyer's emails chimed on his phone, notifications flooding. He opened one. We're in. Deliver, and we'll back you fully. Another. You've proven yourself. Send the contracts. For the first time, the leverage wasn't theirs. It was his. The pursuers lunged, but police sirens pierced the square. The city had heard. The people had seen. In that moment, Carter realized he wasn't the desperate man begging for survival anymore. He was the man with proof, with deals, with momentum. And he wasn't alone. She gripped his hand tight, eyes blazing. You did it. Not because you had everything, but because you refused to quit when you had nothing. Her words sank deep, steadying him like steel. The van screeched away, abandoning the plaza. The neighbor collapsed into relief. Buyers confirmed meetings, contracts, calls. The debt, the shame, the years of failure, none of it defined him anymore. What defined him was this, standing when every force had tried to keep him down. As the sun rose higher, painting the towers gold, Carter looked at her, at the lockbox, at the papers spread in his hands. This was not an ending, it was a beginning. For once, he didn't fear the future. He was ready to build it.